Hello, everyone, and welcome back to NeuroAlchemy, a NeuroSynergy podcast where science meets soul and where healing is understood as a multidimensional, nonlinear, and where transformation is approached with clarity, compassion, and depth. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah Young. Here on NeuroAlchemy, we slow the conversation down on purpose. We define terms clearly, we honor the nervous system, and we explore healing not as a performance or a quick fix, but as a lived, embodied process of becoming. Because clarity creates safety, and safety opens the door to more healing opportunities. Before we begin, a gentle note for sensitive listeners. Today's conversation includes themes of trauma, identity shifts, chronic stress, and deep inner transformation. Please listen in a way that feels supportive for your body and your nervous system. You are welcome to pause. You are welcome to take breaks. Nothing here needs to be absorbed all at once. Take a breath. You're not behind. Your nervous system is welcome here. Today, I'm joined by Anik Malenfant, and I'm grateful to welcome her into the space. Anik is an inner work strategist whose life journey moved through domestic abuse, chronic illness, codependency, burnout, and profound misalignment into clarity, sovereignty, and soul-aligned purpose. After spending more than 15 years on Wall Street, Anik reached a point where external success no longer matched her inner truth. Through deep inner work, nervous system regulation, and intuitive alignment, she rewrote the script of her life and built it from the inside out. Today, she supports others in doing the same by guiding them through self-alchemy, inner alignment, and values-driven transformation that restores not just prosperity, but peace, agency, and wholeness. Anik, I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to NeuroAlchemy.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's such a pleasure to connect with you here today.
Before we move into the conversation, I always like to begin with a gentle arrival. How are you arriving today? How has your day been going?
Really, really well. I had a nice healing session this morning, so that's always a great way to start the day. And actually, really bubbling with excitement because the topics that we are going to cover today are passion projects or really at the core of what I love. And so when it comes to having these types of conversation, my soul always gets super excited. So grounded and excited all at the same time.
And isn't that the fuel for all the good things that we bring into the world, right? That feeling of passion, that light, that drive that lights us up inside. So that's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And there's no right way to arrive here for all of our listeners out there. However, you're showing up today is enough. Before we go deeper, I'd love to orient our listeners a bit. Here on NeuroAlchemy, we try to define terms as if we're hearing them for the first time. Not because you lack understanding, but because language itself shapes perception, and perception shapes our experiences. And Nick, to begin, I'd love your help grounding a few terms that come up often in your work. When you use the phrase self-alchemy, what does that mean? Practical, lived terms.
For me, self alchemy really represents our internal capacity that's built in to transform whether it's our trauma, our emotions, or perceptions into experiences, points of view, or strengths that support us in going forward. Every experience has an opportunity to make us stronger. And so, alchemy is the magic that happens within that allows us to move forward in that way.
How do you define inner alignment, especially for people who feel chronically disconnected from themselves?
For me, inner alignment means the release of separation. And I know that sounds really vague, but when you think about how we live our lives, we live it based on the roles for which we play and how we show up for other people. So that creates fragmentation in our relationships, but it also creates fragmentation within ourselves. So for me, inner alignment really points to our capacity to show up in our fullness, no matter what job we're showing up to, whether that's mother, daughter, CEO, this woman, where we can show up fully in who we are in all places.
What do you mean by rewriting the script of your life? How is that different from positive thinking or mindset work?
I think when we look at positive thinking, it can somewhat be surface level. And mindset work, as powerful as it is, and I love mindset work, it's one of the tools that I love. The difference is the embodiment of it. So when you're rewriting a new script, you're not just writing it, you're living it. And I think that's really the difference. How I would discern and define the difference is we can talk about feeling better, which is often in the positive affirmations. But when you arrive to a place where you are living the story of your new script, that's where it really counts. And that's where it feels different in the body.
You've shared that your life included long-standing cycles of trauma, chronic illness, and self-betrayal. I'd love for you to walk us through your journey, not in detail that feels overwhelming, but through the lens of awareness. What was the moment or series of moments when you realized you could no longer live in survival mode and that the entire script needed to change?
I think the biggest awareness was realizing that I was in survival mode in the first place because it's almost like how does a fish know it's wet? It just lives in that environment all the time. And so I thought I was thriving, right? So through that lens, I didn't realize that I was actually in a survival mode to start off with. So the first big awareness for me was recognizing that there was a different way to live. The second big awareness for me that awakened one of the gifts that I now hold very true to who I am and how I work is pattern recognition and recognizing how my inherited patterns and the ones that I had developed through my upbringing and through my experience, I had been replaying them over and over and over again. And as soon as I started to recognize these cycles within me, I was able to begin breaking them down by making different choices. So that's how I would speak to that. And realistically, regardless of if it was toxic relationships or depression or the fibromyalgia, all of it came to not a breaking point, but a transformation. It all started with that awareness of recognizing, all right, this is the strategy that I've been using in order to achieve this positive outcome, but the strategy that my body is using, that my subconscious is using, is really working against me. And so being able to flip that.
What were the earliest signs of misalignment you think your body was giving you?
Well, the ones I weren't paying attention to, those would have been the earliest signs. I would say a lack of self trust was a huge indicator. A lack of being able to self validate was another really big one. How desperate I was for external acceptance and recognition to a point where I would put myself in really self destructive and self devaluing experiences. So those were the original symptoms that I didn't pick up until I began to notice them from a place of awareness. So now looking back, I'm like, those were the first ones. But in the moment, I just thought, and it's so normal. It was such a normal thing to not feel good enough because it's such a pandemic in our environment.
How did chronic illness or burnout communicate what words could not?
Well, the fibromyalgia. So I was in chronic pain for 3 years. And what's really interesting is my self-alchemy that led me out of that chronic pain. It was a moment that I can identify specifically. I wish I remember the date, but the moment that I got my prognosis and diagnosis after having been in pain for 2.5, 3 years, they said, "You have fibromyalgia. You're just going to have to put up with this for the rest of your life. Settle in." And I was 28 years old at the time. And excuse my language, I'll bleep it out. But it's like in my mind, something snapped and I said, "F that." like not to the doctor, but in my head. And that's the moment that I realized that I couldn't continue to bear this experience because I feel like a lot of people have this capacity to just put up with it. We just suck up the pain and we just keep pushing through, even when our bodies are literally falling apart, under the pressure. We'll keep doing what we've always been doing, and then we'll assume that we're not strong enough, we're weak, there's something wrong with us. And it was in that moment that I had that break and understood my body was asking me to do something different. And as soon as I awoke that I was no longer going to surrender to what was, the path to change and healing magically presented themselves to me, which is so fun, which is really what I've learned over the last 15 years is how the universe works. You make a decision, the universe follows up with the outcome, the path forward.
You now teach inner work mastery is both the practical and spiritual path.
Mhm.
Many people hear inner work and think it's abstract or emotional. Others think it's spiritual bypassing. How do you explain the relationship between inner work, nervous system regulation, and intuitive alignment in a way that feels grounded and accessible?
For me, I see them all three of those as one thing. Because when you truly dive into your own inner work, and I have a love-hate relationship with that term itself because it has the word work attached to it. Your body is already designed to want to heal and resolve whatever it is that's going on with you. And for me, inner work is just about tuning into your inner wisdom and allowing that inner wisdom and the wisdom of your body to lead you forward by self-inquiry to start, and then personal sovereignty, which is the embodied doing practice. So it's one thing to have a really powerful healing in meditation, but it's another thing to then apply that healing in the choices, the decisions, and the behaviors that you do in everyday practice. So I think that's where both need to happen. So it's the inner world, the inner work with the outer decisions and choices, and that bridges those three elements together.
How does intuition become clearer as regulations improving?
Well, when you're dysregulated, your capacity to tune into your higher mind or your intuition is naturally skewed. Right? Because your body is already throwing out all of this data, right? Because we have our intuition and we have our instincts. So your body's freaking out. Your instincts are throwing up all of these fear sensors. And so it makes being able to hear that soft voice of your intuition challenging because you've got all this internal chaos going on. So how I would describe it is the more you calm your body, the more you quiet your mind, your capacity to discern between your intuition and your instinct becomes stronger. And the more you have the capacity to do that and you practice it, because it's a practice, we all have to practice it, the more clear your intuitive hits will be, and the more you'll trust yourself to take action on them.
After more than 15 years on Wall Street, you made the decision to walk away from a version of success that no longer fit. Many listeners are quietly successful but deeply disconnected. What helps people recognize when their external achievements are no longer aligned with their inner values?
I think one of the biggest indicators is you look good on paper, but you feel like crap inside. And the first assumption is that there's something wrong with them. And so when I started to really pick up on that, my first assumption was I was ungrateful. How dare I want more from life? I should be happy. I have more than other people. I have a great career. I have a house. I have this, that, and the other thing. And so I think once we stop judging ourselves for wanting more joy, more happiness, more peace, and stop blaming ourselves for not being enough to achieve those things within the environments that we've created, then we can really begin to move forward. So for me, it was that realization of, or I would say that release of guilt and then giving myself permission to want more. So I would say that the biggest indicator is how you feel. If you're successful on the outside and unraveling on the inside, that's your cue.
Absolutely. We talk about this a lot on neuroalchemy, but in this society, we're genuinely not there's not a big focus that used to in the United States for us to develop conscious awareness of these different levels of beingness, right? The symptoms of our physical body we're kind of taught to push through and ignore. The emotions that we could use as tools for our upliftment we're taught to shove them down, that they're not appropriate, right? And mindset we could use to lift ourselves up, to take ourselves to higher places, but we don't realize that. So we are our own worst enemy, and we kind of have this way of being in the world that isn't in alignment with who we are as a soul, who we are as a spiritual being. You often say that once someone truly commits, everything aligns, everything flows. That might sound abstract to people who feel stuck. What does that commitment look like in the nervous system? How does the body communicate when we're moving toward truth, with alignment with who we are as a soul rather than away from it?
I would say for most people, that feeling in the body is relief. And I think we've all had that situation where we keep doing what we've always been doing, and then there's this pressure. And then we make that really courageous and scary decision to change what we're doing. And then the anxiety is there in the moment, but the relief happens very quickly after. So I would say that that's for, I'm going to say most people, relief is that secondary emotion after the anxiety and the freaking out of making the change. Is, it was the right decision when there's a part of you that's like, "Okay, good. I get to do something different." And I know it sounds abstract, that just make a commitment to yourself and the universe will conspire your path to create your path forward. But after doing this work for, almost 15 years, I'm I've got so much evidence from my own experience and the thousands of clients that I've worked with, that I just know that when you fully commit, you are such a powerful creator in your life that what you didn't see that was available to you before becomes very clear, because you become open to the idea that change is possible, and then you become committed to it.
For someone listening who feels stuck in old patterns like codependency, self abandonment, or survival mode, what's the first inner shift that begins unlocking momentum? Not a big overhaul, just the first opening.
I would say that that is making a commitment to yourself. So chances are those people are showing up so fully and so lovingly to everybody else in their life. And if they were to see where they are on their own to-do list, they're probably not even on that list or way at the bottom. And so I would say, like, the first big shift is make a commitment to be kind to yourself, to be loving to yourself, and to lead your life, because no one else can actually create or lead your life for you. So commitment would be the first element, and cultivating the courage to do so would be the ingredients that you need in order to make that commitment to self.
Absolutely. And you are absolutely right. We are the only ones that are inhabiting this particular existence at this particular place and time, right? We're the only ones that really have that opportunity, right? To shift, to lift. And that's what everything we talk about on this show is all about. How do we evolve, right? How do we break free? How do we be more of what we are and own our power in a positive way and bring more light into the world? And Nick, we always invite our guests to offer a gentle challenge or invitation of the week. Is there one nervous system safe practice you'd like to invite people to explore over the next 7 days? We invite them to try this each day and see what happens.
A really powerful practice that I love to start people off with, that when practiced on a regular basis, has completely transformed people is so simple. And we don't do it, even though we all know we should, is a regular check in. So, one way to remind yourself to check in with yourself is I like to habit stack. So, whenever I'm changing tasks or whenever I'm moving into a different phase of my day, I always check in and I ask myself these three questions: how do I feel? How do I want to feel? And what needs to change so that I can feel that way? And just using those three questions of self inquiry helps you to check in on your mental, emotional, and physical state. It allows you to discern and create clarity around where you want to be. It's like, well, I'm super stressed out right now. Okay, well, how would you like to feel instead? I'd like to feel peaceful. Okay, well, what do you need to do in order to feel peaceful? I need to stop stressing out about the stuff I can't control. Okay, great. So you within those three questions, you define where you are, where you want to be, and how to get there. And so when you do that on a regular basis throughout the day, it is such a powerful way to create a regulation, not just in your body, but also you're reprogramming your neurology because you're training it to think differently, to feel differently, and to behave and respond differently. So I would leave them with that for practice for the week.
If you would, when you send me your other information for our show notes, will you send me those 3 questions that you just said in a follow-up to that I thought of? Because, for me, sometimes my life gets kind of interesting in terms of the amount of things I'm trying to juggle at one time, and life gets away from me. So when I'm trying to implement new habits, there's a couple things that I do that are beneficial. I go into my calendar actually, and I for new, like, rituals, and I'll put in every day for a recurring every day, like, I think I'm gonna finish lunch around 12:30. Every day at 12:30, my calendar app goes off and says, "Hey," and it checks in with me on these, different areas. This would be a really great thing for that, and you can do it, you know, 3 times during the day. It won't take you guys very long to do. I've used habit apps before where I kind of put in there what I'm tracking, and that's kind of fun because you set the parameters for what you think you can achieve, and you go in every day and you kinda like, yes, this is what I did today, whether it's a number or it's an amount of minutes that you dedicated yourself to something. But then you're releasing dopamine, you're giving yourself that reward, and you're cultivating trust with yourself because you're following through with something that you set out to do. So just some ideas for you guys to see what works for you. As we begin to close, Anik, what do you most hope listeners walk away with after hearing our conversation today?
I hope that they will cut themselves some slack because we all feel like we need to do more. And the reality is there you've got no more to give. And to change your perspective on how is showing up in life going to be more valuable instead of being more productive? Because we all look at our life wondering I want to get more accomplished, and we're on this time treadmill. And if can give yourself permission to recognizing that you're already at full capacity and then choosing what is truly important to you. And if you're spending 80% of your time stressed out about something, then that's a really powerful opportunity for you to reflect in your final hours. Are you going to be happy that you worked more and that you were stressed out about everything? Or are you going to regret how you're choosing to spend your time? Because that's what we do here on the planet is we're literally spending our time, i.e. our life, and we are the ones who decide what we're spending our time on. So if they can think of it in a different way is where would you rather invest your time? What's going to make those final breaths and those final moments really meaningful to you? And I can guarantee you it's not, I'm so glad that I worked harder so I could do A, B, and C. I'm so glad that I gave myself permission to be true to who I was. I gave myself permission to be truly happy and enjoy life. I gave myself permission and I prioritized spending time with those that I love, doing the things that I love. So not to like be all doom and gloom and think about your final breaths, but realistically, time is the only thing that you have, and your sovereignty to choose what you do with it only belongs to you. No matter how the perception is that circumstances outside of you own that choice. It's always yours. So that's what I would leave them as, is to kind of challenge them and say, hey, only you get to spend your time, just like only you get to decide where you spend your money. Invest it wisely.
And I would say that's another invitation to kind of, reflect. And it's not even a bad one to do on a daily basis, right? With yourself as you're maybe winding down for the evening, take some time out just with yourself. Check in with your body, with your emotions, with your mind, with how things are going. Reflect, see what you can shift, what you can try differently tomorrow, what worked really well, right?
Exactly.
And Nick, thank you for the depth, honesty, and grounded clarity you brought into the space today. Your story is a powerful reminder that transformation isn't about becoming someone new. It's about shedding what was never yours and returning to the self beneath the conditioning. Before we close, I want to name something personal. I never leave these conversations unchanged. There's always something I'm carrying forward with me, something I'll reflect on, something that I'll continue integrating long after the recording ends. And if this episode resonated with you, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing it. That's how these conversations travel. That's how they reach the people who need to hear them the most. You can learn more about Anik's work through the links in the show notes, and you can explore additional healing resources at the links there. Thank you for being here. This is Dr. Sarah. This is NeuroAlchemy. You are not broken. You are becoming. Bye for now.